Hello everyone, my name's Kath Haslam and I'm a clinical academic at the University of Queensland in Australia, and it's great to have the opportunity to talk to you about some of the work that we've been doing on managing loneliness. And I want to thank Ellie and the network for providing me with the opportunity to do just that. I'm just sorry to not be there in person with you to join in with the discussion in real time. So if my talk sparks any questions for you, then please do feel free to get in contact with me afterwards. So bear with me for a moment while I just share my slides. So you will have heard or be hearing from people talking about a range of solutions to manage loneliness. And my particular focus will be on building social group belonging. And this is based on decades of research showing the important and vital role that our social group ties play in mental health and a range of health conditions and contexts across the lifespan. And this work has been detailed in a number of volumes, most recently The New Psychology of Health, Unlocking the Social Cure, and Social Scaffolding. Now we know from population statistics, and they're pretty similar across Australia and the UK, that about 1 in 4 people are lonely, and that young people are especially vulnerable. But the picture is more complex and worrying for those who experience mental health problems. We know that loneliness contributes to and exacerbates mental health problems. Longitudinal studies show that loneliness predicts an array of mental health presentations that include anxiety, depression, psychosis, and stress. And it will be no surprise to anybody here that relationship quality is a pretty important part of this story. But relationship quality is intimately tied to loneliness. And longitudinal research shows that this relationship here between quality and mental health is actually underpinned or mediated by loneliness. So it's people's subjective appraisals of their connections that's key to mental health decline. Now, there are many relationships that we have with other people, but one that we tend to take for granted are those relationships that we have with groups of other people, our family and friendship groups, our professional and working groups, our community, neighbourhood and interest groups, just to name a few. And these groups play a pretty integral role in mental health. And there are numerous studies showing this. And I just want to illustrate just one of these studies, led by a colleague of ours, Tegan Cruis, looking at depression relapse, which is something that we all find as clinicians somewhat difficult to manage. Now, the data that I'm going to be showing you come from a population-based study where people with clinical depression were followed over a period of 6 years. And what this study actually showed was that people who acquired no group memberships, they acquired no group ties in that 6-year period, well, they had a 41% risk of depression relapse. But depression relapse reduced markedly and significantly as people's social connections and social group ties actually increased. So that among those people who acquired 3 or more social group ties, well, their risk of depression relapse was only 15%. So while it's clear that all of our social relationships matter when it comes to managing loneliness, what these and now a wide range of studies are actually showing is that our social group ties play an especially beneficial role in this story. Now, there are many group-based interventions, and key among these are social prescribing interventions, arts-based, interest-based and activity groups that people are supported to join in their local communities. Now, these are a really key part of the solution, but it's also the case that joining just any group will not do, and it may not provide a long-term solution. And there are a number of reasons for this. First, we know from research that groups need to provide people with meaning, purpose and value in their lives in order to be able to produce health gain. And the groups that achieve that health gain, well, they're going to have to change over a person's lifetime to remain meaningful. There's also work showing that a single positive group experience is a very important stepping stone for people, particularly those who've been experiencing loneliness and social isolation, disconnection for some time. But the evidence shows here that it's people's social group capital. It's belonging to multiple groups that's actually associated with greater and more sustainable health gain. And ultimately, I think that we would all agree that what we want to do is to empower people to manage their own social group worlds in the long term and to do so independently. So just telling somebody to go out there and join a group or a couple of groups isn't necessarily going to cut it. So we need something in addition to those individual group activities that are out there, something that works alongside those groups to help people to harness them, to use them to best effect. And this is where a new program that we've developed, Groups for Health, I think may be able to help. Now, Groups for Health is an evidence-based 5-module intervention that gives people the knowledge and the skills that they need to build and sustain their social group ties independently in the longer term. Now, the program itself helps people to understand the value of groups and the value that they have in their lives and for health. It raises people's awareness of the groups in their lives. And we use a social identity mapping tool that you can see an example of here that helps people to illustrate their current social group worlds. We work with people to help them make the most of their existing groups, but also to extend on those existing groups and join new ones in ways that support their health. And the program also helps people to develop trial and troubleshoot plans to do all of this in ways that ensure that their health enhancing groups endure. So does the program work? And we've conducted a number of trials of the program, and I just want to give you a snapshot of some of the evidence. So some of the evidence is showing that Groups for Health actually reduces loneliness and improves mental health. And you can see that here. In the green, it's Groups for Health, and in the red, it's treatment as usual. And treatment as usual in this case here was medication, psychotherapy, and also a combination of both. Groups for Health outcomes are also sustainable. You can see the decline here in mental health symptoms over a 6-month period, but also an improvement in well-being, reduction in loneliness symptoms, improvement in life satisfaction and in self-esteem. And our most recent trial is an RCT that compares Groups for Health with group CBT in young people with depression. And we've just recently collected the 12-month follow-up data. And what you can see here in the green is Groups for Health, red CBT. And you can see that both programs are pretty equivalent over time in reducing those symptoms of depression, even all the way up to 12-month follow-up. And similarly, you can see that Groups for Health is as good as group CBT in reducing loneliness over time. But where Groups for Health produces better results is in reducing social anxiety, as you can see the greater and more significant reduction here, but also in improving group belonging. Now, taking this one step further, we can actually look at the efficacy of these interventions in the context of COVID restrictions, as our 12-month follow-up data was actually collected both before COVID restrictions and after the introduction of COVID restrictions. So you can see here the pre-COVID restriction data, and both interventions are actually doing equivalently well, equally well. But at our 12-month follow-up data for those that was collected during COVID lockdown restrictions actually shows that there was significantly better reduction in loneliness for those who received Groups for Health. So loneliness scores were the lowest amongst those who completed their 12-month follow-up in lockdown and received Groups for Health. Now, as we're talking COVID, there are some other interesting data that's actually been emerging from surveys that colleagues of ours at the University of Queensland have been collecting. And this has involved people from Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States. And these data are looking at people's mental health and well-being in the context of restrictions and living with the virus. Now, unsurprisingly, people who were vulnerable due to health and various other concerns were experiencing significant problems with loneliness and feeling more lonely. But what really surprised us in these data was that the people who were actually well connected with their social groups had significantly greater concerns about becoming lonely. And this was particularly apparent in young people who said that they were confident in using technology that we've been encouraged to use to help people stay socially connected during restrictions. So as this shows, technology on its own isn't a cure for loneliness. Now, what this did was prompted us to develop a brief intervention, brief online activity, kind of social check that draws on some Groups for Health content to get people thinking about how to stay socially connected whilst maintaining physical distance. And we also feel that it might actually have some value in the future if people find themselves in a situation where they can't meet with people face to face. It's a brief 10-minute activity that can be used on any device. And here are just some early pilot data from early runs of the program. These are data from people who trialled Groups to Connect in the United Kingdom. And as a brief activity to hold people at a challenging time, there were certainly some positives from the Groups to Connect program. People were telling us that it reminded them of the various ways that they can stay connected to others, especially when they're feeling a bit isolated. It helped people to feel more connected after doing the activity, as you can see here. And it helped people to feel that they were more able to manage right now and helped them to feel supported. It also helped them to feel positive about completing social goals that they'd actually set themselves in the context of the activity. So in and of itself, Groups to Connect is not a standalone solution, but it does speak to the issue of preventing loneliness, which can lead to or exacerbate mental health vulnerabilities. The link to the program is live and it's freely available for anyone to access. So just let me finish with a couple of points in closing. Decades of research has shown that social group connections are pretty vital in supporting health and well-being. But in order to develop and embed them, we do need some investment. And there are two lines of investment that I think are particularly key. The first is that we need diverse, accessible, local groups in people's communities that they can actually access. And alongside this, we need a program that empowers people to harness those groups and work with them in the best possible way, to build and sustain those group ties and to maintain them independently in the longer term. And this is the niche that I think that Groups for Health can fill. So it only leaves me to thank my collaborators on Groups for Health and the various organisations that have been helping us to trial the program, but also to apologise again for not being here live to answer your questions. But here's my email, and please do get in touch with me with any of those questions that you have that this talk sparks. Thank you again for your attention, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of this seminar.